Alright, so part of the reason that I started this thing was, well, A, to sort of give me an excuse that I have a bunch of beers, which has been great, by the way, but B, to, I have like a gazillion ideas, and I don't, like, again, my dad is so sick of hearing about this. It's like, call, hey dad, check this one out, and he's like, doesn't understand them all. So, this is a completely new one. I don't think I've told too many people about this, maybe like a handful at most. So here's the thing. So I've always been interested in the education space. When I was a student at Cornell, I was not a very good student at that, and on a couple occasions, like, was asked to sort of take a little, you know, leave of absence for some period of time. But anyway, came back, graduated. There's a plaque on the wall that says that I did. Awesome. One of the things that just sort of became interesting to me along the way here was a couple things. First of all, I thought that, like, what I was learning was good in many ways, but also broken in others, and a lot of that had to do with the idea of, like, how ridiculous the college textbook was. That market has been, like, blowing up lately. I don't know if you guys saw this, but, like, a company called Chegg, which is pretty innovative in the space, and it's not even doing anything overly crazy. It's just sort of, like, you know, making it more widely known what they're doing, has raised a bunch of money. They're trying to make it easier for kids to get textbooks. My first idea happened to do with textbooks, so that's why I mentioned that. What I'm actually thinking about now, and this is what I'm pitching here, is if you follow some of the things that have happened in education, and we now have things like video cameras where it makes it very easy to record any type of content. What's interesting to me about that is the fact that, like, if you think about a professor, they go into that classroom every day, or however often the lecture is, and every, you know, semester when they give this same class, and they're basically duplicating what they did the previous semester. And if you think about it, this really doesn't make a lot of sense. We know that we have things like the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, you know, A&E, the Biography Channel, all these different sort of what I'll call edutainment kind of categories, where they're essentially taking educational content and marrying it with making it entertaining to watch. So they now have, like, the Military Channel for military history. They have, you know, this is getting more and more sort of niche focused. And sort of couple that with the fact that you have a guy like Bill Gates saying in the next 5 years he believes that the absolute best education in the world will come online. So put all these things together, and sort of what I'm getting at is this idea of what I'm calling right now open transcript. Here's the idea behind it. All the educational content is moving online, and that's a great thing. But here's the challenge with it. I can watch every video on YouTube or these other places. A company called Udemy just got funded the other day with a pretty sizable amount. There's the TED conference where they're putting all these videos online. They're great to watch those and all this other stuff. But here's the problem. Nobody knows that I actually did any of that. And that's the problem. There's no way right now to get credit for any of that consumption. I can watch every video under the sun for all this other educational content. Lynda.com is another great reference for, you know, particularly for technical things. There's all these things that are making their way online, and I can watch all of them. I can participate. I can actually go out and try these things, you know, learn a lot of information, but nobody knows it. So this idea of what I'm calling right now, it's called open transcript, is if we can get the universities, and I'll argue that the U.S. has arguably the best, you know, higher education system in the world. I mean, people are still coming here to learn, not going elsewhere, and I think that will continue probably for at least the next 20 years, assuming we continue to operate the way we have. But if you look at some of the trends, the cost of these things is going up at like 5% a year. It's well outpacing sort of you know, increases in income. And you know, if all this stuff is moving online, a lot of paradigms are going to shift. And one of those is the fact that right now you have this whole idea of admission. Well, admission was first brought up to deal with the idea that you couldn't fit everybody that wanted to go to a class in the room that could actually hold the class. So a place like Stanford probably has a, what, 12% admission rating out of, you know, 100 people that apply, 12 get in. Well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that only so many people can fit in that lecture hall, and the professor can only teach so many people. Well, now that we have video, and you can put these things online, I think a lot of those paradigms are going to change, and they should change. You know, if all of a sudden I can go watch this thing and all I need is a laptop, why should there be an admission process? Like, can that professor only teach, you know, the 100 kids that are in the room? Why can't he teach the 1 million kids in the state of California, or the, you know, 10 million in the United States itself, or the 40 million in the world that want to take that class? Now, a lot of this also has to do with economics. If you think about the education sphere, what does the top professor actually make on an annual basis? I would argue in terms of salary, and I'm talking like the top guy at, you know, the Stanford or Harvard or, you know, maybe Cornell or some other school. It's like, you know, and she's shaking her head, not Cornell. You know, that's getting paid through the nose, and he's like the top guy in his field. He's probably pulling down $500,000 and maybe has like a book deal or something like that that gives him some other stuff, like you know, he writes a textbook or some other thing. The point is like, it's not even close to what you could make in other realms of business. Like, you're in the private sector, you're, you know, starting a company, you're a, you know, a top lawyer or something like that, or accountant, whatever you're doing. I mean, you could make far in excess of what you could make in education. I see that as a huge problem. I don't see any reason in the world why you can't have what I'll call like professorpreneurs. And the only reason why they haven't been able to do that so far is the fact that what they do currently doesn't scale. Right? They can only teach the people that are actually in the room, because that's what the universities of the world have said, okay, these are your students. Well, what if we could totally like break down that dynamic and actually make it where it was they could teach millions of people? Well, in fact, they can do that because we have the technology that makes it possible. The only thing that hasn't changed yet is we need a system of delivery, and things like University of Phoenix have made some progress on this. But there's more work that needs to be done there. iTunes U, another great example of a lot of progress on this, and Udemy, a lot of progress on this. The challenge is we've made this progress in terms of the content. We haven't made the progress in terms of getting credit for having consumed the content. And that's what I think is really missing. So with that, I'll open it up.
Okay, so when I was at the University of Alabama, they had a system called Integrity. And so I used it in a history class, and the teacher would record his lecture. And when you went online to check it out, it said, Nicole Imhoff checked in on this time, listened to Integrity, listened to this lecture for 60 minutes, and the professor could see, oh, well, she's making some effort, like she listened to. Mm-hmm. So there is like a way for professors to see you.
And was that Alabama specific, or was that?
I don't know if it's a company, but I know it's part of my like massive amount.
It's not Bama specific. Yeah. All the profs know, like you could be in the shower once you log in.
Yeah. But the problem I'm running called Integrity that we used at Alabama. So
So professors can speak all they want and broadcast that wherever they would like. However, how do they grade all of the tests for the people that are signing in?
Right. So the way I would look at that is right now the way they're already doing that in the university structure is using TAs. Right? So I think that's the same way that you would approach it in this case. And if you look at it like, let's just remove a step from the higher education sphere and look at like the sort of either primary or secondary education. One of the big ideas that gets talked about a lot is sort of like, you know, equality of access, right? There's sort of like, oh, well, there's the schools in the suburbs that have great teachers and blah, 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 and they're great. And then there's like the schools in the inner city and the teachers are scared to go to work every day and they don't know who, like, you gotta go through a metal detector just to walk in the building, right? If all of a sudden this thing moved to video, you can guarantee equality of access because the video is the same no matter where you're watching it.
Yeah, but how are people getting graded?
So that's exactly the piece I think is missing. Is that you don't have a way of actually grading the content that's consumed online.
There's
there are solutions for that. Like we do corporate compliance training. It's mandatory. It's regulated, and there's video that streams the content we're supposed to be watching. To your point, it's like you know when you log in, you know how long you've been on there. But what solves the grading piece is that you watch X amount of content, and then there's Q&A. and you have to answer, and before you can move on to the next segment or whatever. And as you answer, you have the option of answering correctly or incorrectly, and you can retake the question if you answer incorrectly, but you can control and monitor how that all goes. So you can grade through as video is being streamed, and then when somebody completes, they're completed, and you've catalog their responses, etc., so that you know like what's been consumed by that individual, how long it took when they started, all the data. Yeah.
This is, I'm just trying. I want to be clear. So this is software that's related to the class, or it's like bought by the university?
Yeah. So if you're doing a history class, for example, and it's a 45-minute lecture, you want to make sure that somebody's actually understanding the content that's being shared, and they're getting a little bit of Q&A as it's going. You could put all the Q&A at the end of the 45 minutes, or you could disperse it like a 10-minute, 20-minute, 40-minute interval.
Within the video itself?
Within the video, yeah. It's like a video pause, and then you ask the questions, and it could be fill-in, so maybe a TA does still need to look at it later, or it could be immediate, like, multiple choice, and then all of a sudden you know if somebody got it or didn't get it, or and even give them a re-opportunity to re-answer if they didn't get it right the first time.
And furthermore, they're not reasoning questions; they're material specific.
Sure.
Right.
So are you familiar with the Kaufman Foundation?
Yeah, I looked at that.
Are you applied to them?
I thought about it, and it's.
Education space is getting really hot right now.
It really is. I've been looking at a lot of them.
Do you think universities will exist in 10 years?
Yeah, I think the quality.
I'll be blatantly honest with this. So one of the things that's really interesting to me is if you look 100 years ago and look at some of the names of the universities we have like celebrated this time, like the Carnegie Mellon, the Vanderbilts, the Dukes. They were all started by like the robber barons of their day, right? Even Bill Gates hasn't built a university. He's the richest man in the world. It's kind of like, well, if he can't do it or isn't, like, who is? I guess that's anyway, so the point is, like, I don't see why that hasn't happened, and I think that needs a lot of innovation.
I like your idea. I think it's more like because now you have all this crowdsourcing and so on. When I hire an engineer, I go to audit.
What I would point out is that once you throw in TAs, you're basically talking about a standard online education model that already exists. So again, and I don't want to violate the one rule that I set, but this last one I'll make. The thing that I see as being interesting in this is if you can make it so that the professors who are already the masters of their subject can sort of increase their earnings. And you use economics to solve this problem. Because right now they only can make so much.
At the end of the semester.
Yeah. I wouldn't want an online education. I would want to actually go to class.
If I'm going to pay that much money for an education.
Yeah, but what if like you're